What does it hurt to learn something about something you don't know, about people you don't know? What does it hurt to do that?
Muslims are made to look villainous on the mainstream media.
An easy target, a target that nobody ever wants to defend.
They always say, we want you to get involved in the community. We are involved in the community, you just don't see it.
She looked at the image and she was like, you don't at all look like a terrorist there. But like, it's like, what does a terrorist look like?
Mainly for eggs and for the children as well. Because my kids don't play with toys at all. It all started off with one or two, now it's become a lot. We have rabbits as well, so come through. Where's your little rabbit?
This rabbit from one.
Oh, so this is your one? Yeah. He's become very big, hasn't he?
Its name Chocolate Chip.
I was born in London, and my mother was a woman that wears hijab. And at that time, around the 1985, it was quite rare to see people wearing hijab at that time in Britain. So as I was with her in the car once, somebody swore at my mum and told her to go back to her country. So as a child, obviously you get quite confused. You don't understand, why would someone say that to your mum? Why would they attack her and tell her to go back to her country? Or when we are in our country, I mean, I didn't know anything else apart from Britain. She was quite upset. I asked her, why did they say that to you? And she just said to you know what, we will never belong here. This is not our country, and they'll never accept us.
I was born at the Elephant and Castle in South London. My family came in the early 80s. My parents specifically, they came as students in their 20s. Their intention was never to stay, and I think that that's an experience or narrative that other immigrant children would have heard from their parents. So they were supposed to finish their studies and head back to Sierra Leone. But I think the convenience of the life out here was something that held them back. And then also the fact that there was a war brewing in the early 90s. So they raised me and my two younger sisters. And actually my experience of Islam came through my love of reading. You know, the books that I'd see that my parents would leave behind on the house. I started to practice the deen when I was a teenager, and my parents were very nervous about that. Not only because it was such an abrupt change for them to see their eldest daughter become so observant in faith, but also in terms of the political context of the time. 9/11 had happened a few years prior, and then we had the 7/7 bombings. So to be observant, or at least fully observant, visibly observant, was always going to be a concern for any parent.
We were living in the northwest of London. It was an area called Stanmore, which is a very rich area, but we lived in a council estate in that part of the city. And so it was really difficult to adjust and know actually how to fit into a society that didn't seem to welcome you. I was a bookworm. I loved to read. And so, you know, to avoid kind of conflicts in the playground and comments from some of those children when I was in primary school, I would just sit in the library and read. And, you know, I remember the first school that I went to in London, I read everything in the library and they had to get me more books.
I lived in Sweden till I was 9 years old. Both my parents came from Somalia during the Civil War. So when there's a civil war in Somalia, they fled and came as young professionals. In 2003 is when my parents decided that we're going to move to the UK. We moved to a town called Bolton, which till this day I'm like, I don't know, out of all the places that we could have lived in the UK, why did we move to Bolton? I don't understand that. I grew up like knowing everybody on my street. Like in Sweden, I knew everybody in the community. We all used to go play. We used to go play football together. We used to go out, eat together. We used to have different, like, I was allowed to go to this piece of people's house. So like the first thing I thought was like, oh, let me get to know our neighbors. And I knock on the door and I'm like, hi, you know, we're new neighbors. And it was just like straight hostility of like, how dare you knock on our doors? And I was like, oh. And that's like the first thing my father told us. It was like, you have to be careful about where you go, who you go with, you know, who you're around. And I was like, what? We were the only black people and the only Muslim people that lived on that entire street. And I think there was like a concerted effort to make sure that we'd move away from that street. Like my father's car had been broken into. And then this time we also get like eggs thrown at our windows. And my father's like, I know who it is. It's our neighbors. It's the ones that are literally opposite our house. Like, and they would like cluck and they would laugh and they would, you know, say comments and things. And my father would just fix his windows. He would clean like and he wouldn't say it. He would never say a negative word about them. He would never say anything. He would just say these people are just ignorant. And the best thing you could do is lead by example. But he would, you know, he would always report, but nothing would happen.
I was invited by a senior manager in an organisation, but because of defamation purposes, I'm not allowed to name the actual person. It was a lady, you know, a white lady who was interested upon seeing my CV about a career in doing some kind of reporting and on-screen work presenting. So when I went to network with this lady in the actual, you know, office, as soon as she saw me, she became very, you know, serious looking. She wasn't friendly, wasn't hospitable. She knew I was waiting in the room to see her, but she carried on having a conversation with her other colleague for half an hour outside. She was really trying to belittle me. She was trying to say, well, you do know that you don't really have the right look to be here, you know, to be in this industry. There's a certain criteria, there's a certain look we have, especially when you want to do on-screen work. And I was really taken aback, you know, for somebody to say that to your face and feel that it's okay to discriminate so openly and being in such a senior position. Would you ever consider changing your look? And she actually kind of indicated with her gestures that it was the hijab. She actually went like this, changing your look. So I knew that that's what she was referring to. And I just froze. I literally froze and I didn't know what to say. And I couldn't believe I was having this conversation. And this was really hurtful and it builds on insecurities within you. And because I was having such a strong faith and because my reason for wearing the hijab was for Allah, was for God, I said, you know, I'd rather not have a job in a certain organisation. I'd rather have my identity, you know, without compromising it.
His name, Patch. You can see how he has the patches. He has, but this one, whenever you stay next to him or touch him, he starts running away very fast.
When I went to high school, for myself, I wanted to wear the hijab. Now, my mum will tell you, if she was here, she'll say to you, Asma's always wanted to wear hijab since she was 8 years old. So my mum took me out to go hijab shopping. It was a lovely time to be my mother. And then when I went into school, that's when I thought, yes, I'm completely different to everybody else. And I used to actually celebrate that difference. When people say to me, oh, what are you? I'm like, oh, I'm a Muslim. I'm originally from Libya. I was born in London, so I was quite happy with my identity, but I don't think everybody else was happy with my identity because they saw me, I was a confident person. I was a very outspoken child. So I think they didn't really play well with the children there and the teachers. So I suffered a lot in high school because of wearing my hijab. It started off by teasing me. They called me, oh, we got a rag on your head. You look like this, you look like that. I didn't really listen to them. I was just going, you know, when you go past the corridor, you hear these stupid little remarks from teenage girls, you just walk it off. But the more I be quiet, the more it became more intense. So I was walking up to my maths building, and this is a school in northwest London. It's called Dunkirk School, Dunkirk Girls' School at that time. And I was walking, I felt someone grab my hijab from the back, and I fell down the stairs. As they grabbed me, obviously my hijab came off, and then they started to beat me up. They started to punch me. It was a couple of girls, and I got beaten up quite severely. And when I went to the head teacher, they told me that, oh, well, you shouldn't be wearing what you're wearing on your head if you don't want any problems. And I thought, but hold on a second, you're supposed to be protecting me while I'm at school, I'm not with my parents. I was fearing for my life. I was looking over my shoulders every time I went into school because I never knew what would happen, because it was quite rough. So I had to fight back, unfortunately. I had to learn to defend myself because the teachers weren't doing anything. The head teacher definitely wasn't doing anything. And I felt like she had a hidden agenda against me to show everybody that I'm not accepted in society. And I'd come home and, you know, my shirt would be torn, or my scarf I have to buy a new scarf because it would be torn up. Yeah, it was difficult, and it came to a point where somebody took out a knife on me once. And that was hard because I had to learn how to deal with it. I had to learn how to defend myself, because if I didn't defend myself, I wouldn't be here today. But alhamdulillah, I mean, going through those struggles at school, my mom taught me, in times of need, you can only ask Allah for help. Sorry.
The BNP, who were a fascist political party, were very active in our local area and really kind of took it on themselves to make our lives hell and the lives of other minority groups in the local area. One of the things that we used to get a lot of, actually, with the British National Party was the kids, the boys, which they were kids. They were kids that went to our school, you know, that knew us, but still seemed to, you know, be influenced and radicalized by the notions that there was an us and them and that we were somehow different. One of the things that really hurt was one particular boy who was part of this group, who was really close to our family. Like, you know, we spent all of our primary school years together in the same school. And I remember he'd come from quite a difficult childhood, and he was always in our house, always, you know. And my mum is a very kind of homely mum, you know, dinner on the table when you got home from school, you know, packed lunches, you know, very kind of, you know, doing activities for us during the week. On a weekend, you know, we'd go and get a film and we'd sit down and she'd have popcorn ready and all of these kinds of things. And they loved it. It was just really strange and really hurtful to then, on one occasion where he followed me home after I was coming back from high school, and he just followed me home and just started calling me all sorts of racist names. And he was on his own, so it wasn't like he was being influenced by other people. seeing how people can shift so drastically to the point where, you know, he was saying, if I see you out here again, you're going to be dead. And, you know, that kind of really violent language, I think just always sits with me. How hate breeds so quickly. It's just, to me, that was, I think, even now, I don't think I've ever said that to anyone, but it's just, you know, that hurt, I think, from that is really significant. When I reflect on it now and I think about the way that people are radicalized and how easily hate kind of seeps into systems because of the way that we talk about people and how we see them as other, that even people that we know, we somehow learn to hate. I never actually spoke to anyone about any of the kind of, you know, Islamophobic attacks that I went through, particularly in my teen years, because the moment that you mention that you've been attacked or verbally abused, what does your family want to do? Is they want to protect. My family particularly were very concerned about my safety because at the time in the 90s in London, there was a whole host of racialized stabbings and killings and attacks and so on. I didn't want it to impact my ability to move around my area and the city and so on.
Because I'm a visibly Muslim woman, I just can't progress like my fellow white colleagues or those who conform to the ideals of what journalists and TV presenters or reporters look like. I don't have any of that. I don't conform to their beauty expectations, and nor do I really want to, you know, because my purpose is to do good journalism, and I think that it's nothing to do with how you look. Obviously, you have to look presentable, but the hijab should not, and it does not obstruct how much you can achieve. I went home and I just started crying, you know, my kids were all at school, my husband was at work, and I remember my father rang me that day to say, oh, how did it go with so-and-so? And he was really excited, bless him, because my parents have always been really supportive with my work and anything I do. And I remember I just burst into tears and I was telling my dad, you know, look, this is what happened. She said that I don't have the right look. And, you know, she was asking whether I'd compromise my hijab. And my dad was, you know, look, he said to me, you've done the right thing by walking away from it and, you know, saying that you wouldn't compromise, you know, your deen or Islam for the sake of a job, and you've done the right thing. And he was just really reassuring me, don't give up. That's one thing my father always says to me, don't give up, you know, keep persevering.
My grandma used to live with us in Sweden until she moved to the UK with us. And I remember, I've actually never spoken about this. She used to go on walks. She was very elderly and like she had arthritis, and she had to go on regular walks. And this is my father's mother. And these boys, these young boys, these white boys who would like always in the park, and they would always say racist and rude stuff, and like, but they wouldn't do anything. They would just, you know, say things, and we'd always ignore them. She went on a walk by herself. We came back from mosque and we were like, oh, where's grandma? And my mum was like, she went on a walk, but she's not home. She's not back yet. And my mum just assumed that like she ran into somebody that she knew, and they were just talking in the park maybe. So me and my siblings went to look for her. We took the route that she usually takes. And I still remember, and I was like probably, 10 years old at the time, I still remember finding my grandmother on the floor. They attacked her when she was by herself, and they beat her with her own stick. And nobody had helped her. Nobody had stopped to help her. I mean, so she made the decision to leave the UK actually after that incident. And it was so heartbreaking to see somebody so vulnerable. Like, I can't imagine seeing anybody hurt. The incident was caught on CCTV. The police ended up finding the young boys. They literally lived in the area. We knew who they were. They found the young boys that did it. And then my grandma refused to take... She basically said these are young kids and she doesn't want to ruin their lives. And she forgave them, and therefore they weren't charged. And I remember being so angry. And before we moved away, because we moved out of that house not long after that, I remember the young boys coming to our houses and apologizing and really thanking my grandma for not throwing away their lives, you know? And for me, it was like, it was such a, I think it was such a powerful thing for her to do, to be able to forgive somebody that has, to forgive children. They were children. They were children. They were like 14-year-olds, kids who have been raised with hate. As Muslims, like, we are expected to forgive. We do need to be able to see the bigger picture and the impact that certain decisions and things that we make have. And like, for my grandma, she felt that forgiving them was going to have a bigger impact than having them prosecuted.
We're looking at our institutions. We have to be looking at things at a macro level. Like, why is it that many of us come from countries that are so debt-ridden and so impoverished, and yet this is where these places of the countries or the regions where the wealth of the UK and France came from in the first place? Why are they still in debt, or why are they so impoverished decades after they were able to win their freedom and independence from their, quote-unquote, colonial masters? These are the types of conversations and debates that we need to be having.
Behold, I will make them of the synagogue of Satan, which say they are Jews, and are not, but do lie. Behold, I will make them come and worship before your feet.
It brought me flashbacks to what happened to me. You don't know how to act because you've got children. You're trying to shield your children from this crazy person who's trying to tell you that your religion is no good and that you're following the wrong religion and that you're not accepted.
I'm not no Christian pastor. Back the up from me, bro.
Instead of arguing with him, I tried to calm him down because he was very progressive. He was swearing. And he was talking down to the children as well and making them doubt who they are as their own identity, obviously being a Jewish family. And that all didn't sit well with me. And I said to him, what you're doing is wrong. The public transport, you shouldn't be talking to people like that. You should allow everyone to practice what faith they wish to follow.
Why you wearing trousers, man? You should be wearing trousers, man. So you know own shit, man. It's talkers. No, it's not my opinion. It's God's word.
I was called a hijabi Muslim hero. When has in the history of British media and has a woman been called a hero, especially with hijab on?
Why you wearing trousers, man?
But what disappointed me was there was only 2 people probably who spoke against this man and nobody else got up.
So I became the president of the National Union of Students. Upon reflection, probably a role that I wouldn't have taken on, but I felt like I needed to take on. At the time, there was so much divide within the student movement. There was a lot of racist and Islamophobic rhetoric, that it was really important to have somebody that was able to challenge those in an unapologetic way. we took the sustainability department out of NUS and we made it its own entity. It became a body that didn't only just work in higher education as NUS does, but it worked across the education sector. It became a body that was student-led, that was like way more radical and worked on social justice and climate justice rather than planting trees on campuses and talking about, you know, the polar bears and plastic straws. They were really talking about systemic issues and working with grassroots communities. And I'm still doing a lot of work with climate advocacy. I'm a climate justice consultant and I consult for the UN on green jobs, on like climate justice-based work, on SDGs, how we make the world a better place.
I was able to be accepted for what I am. For me, it was significant because it was the barrier that I overcame in dispelling those stereotypes and actually achieving my goal, which was to actually achieve that without compromising my identity. Other Muslim women from countries like the Middle East and, you know, other people who are saying that, wow, this is really good, you achieve this. Like, there was one Muslim lady from France who said they would never have this on our TV. So we're so happy to see this happening in Scotland. And it was really touching, it was really overwhelming, but it was also really heartbreaking because it just showed that people don't have the same equal opportunities in life as a visibly Muslim woman.
We were going to spend the weekend in London and meet a friend of mine there who was Huda, and then Shaista, who's the other hijabi, kind of came down from Oxford. And so we planned to just meet for dinner. But Shaista, who's a big football fan, was like, it's the quarterfinals. You know, we can't not watch the quarterfinals. She then took a selfie of us and she tweeted it. We called it the Three Hijabis because it, you know, that's who we are. That's, you know, visibly, that is what we look like. She tweeted about the amazing win against Ukraine that the England team had managed to achieve, and talked about, why was it that, there was a whole kind of inspired group of people supporting the England team because of how inclusive they were, because of the taking of the knee, because of the wearing of the rainbow armband, all of these equalities issues. And suddenly I was on BBC and on ITV and God knows where else talking about what I thought about the game. I remember my mum saying to me, who's a huge Liverpool fan, since when did you become so actively such a big football fan?
Mum, what does it smell like? It smells like home.
I think for me, I always pride myself in the work that I do for the community. I think that for me is my greatest joy, is knowing that I'm serving my community in the way that I do. And anything else that I receive is a bonus on top of that. Because now I have so many accolades. I've worked in television, I've worked in digital, I've presented, reported, video produced, edited. I can do as much as I need to be able to do to be considered a multimedia journalist. I've worked, in my home country of Sierra Leone, in UK and Turkey and so on. And yet my trajectory has always been very difficult, particularly because I would say I'm a Muslim woman and I don't fit into a culture or a narrative of Muslim women that has been so foundational to how people view Islam. Woefully negative, woefully problematic, but it's what feeds the machine, unfortunately.
The final game came. We knew that it was going to turn racist, just based on our own experiences of, when you're successful and you're doing well, people love you, but the moment you make a mistake, then it's no longer you are a successful player, you are suddenly a black man, you are suddenly a Muslim woman.
In the shadow of their hero, hundreds of protesters took the knee, their chants against racism at Marcus Rashford's mural drowning out the vicious words that were scrawled on the wall before.
So before 9 o'clock, we launched the petition to ban racists from football. And by mid-afternoon, it was like, I don't know, like hundreds of thousands of people had already signed it. And me and Huda and Shaista, you know, in the morning were like, even if we get 5,000 signatures, it'll be great. You know, literally every news channel you can think of was invested in this petition. And it was just growing and growing. And within 48 hours, we'd reached 1 million.
His name is Michelle. He met me on like 2-3 days afterwards, and he bought me a bunch of flowers, and, you know, we just spoke about the more common ground that we have together. We didn't go too much into politics because I think that would just ruin everything, to be honest with you. I mean, everyone has their own ideas about what the Palestinian-Israeli conflict is. But at that point, I'm just talking about, we'll just talk about the society and how we should, you know, we live in Britain and there's different religions and there's different races, how we should come together instead of being separated.
When the Manchester Arena bombing happened, it was, God, less than a year that I'd been there with my own children at a concert, watching Justin Bieber, of all people, at the time. And you know, the kind of that connection not only to Islam, but to the Libyan community specifically, really, really hurt. And I think for me, it was the impact that it had on my children. Them reading the comments, reading articles online, and feeling that actually people hate us for something that we didn't do, that something that we weren't even involved in, was really, really hard. Some of the comments my kids made at the time to me about, you know, I know why people hate us. And I'm like, no, we're not. This isn't us. You know, what happened, what this person did is not us. This isn't who we are. But I think for them, it just felt like a real knock on their own identity, their own idea of who they were.
I remember just the absolute shock, how heartbroken we were. And I remember I was in Manchester that day. Like, I was not far from like the arena. We were like out with some friends. But I just remember being so in shock and like the whole city just mourning, you know? Such a heartbreaking period. Anybody and everybody was really, really like broken at the incident and how it happened, and what had happened, and how shocking it was that something that like can happen so close to our homes.
I was adamant that I was not going to allow what happened to push me home. I know that there were many families, particularly from a Libyan background, that just stopped going out because they were so fearful of numerous attacks that happened across the city, Islamophobic attacks. Those that had daughters particularly would drive them everywhere, back, forth, you know, stopped using public transport because public transport was often the place where a lot of the abusive behaviours were happening.
The Daily Mail mentioned my name in an article about the terrorist attack, which was like the most bizarre, shocking thing. And the connection that they made at the time was the bomb, like terrorist essentially. He went to the University of Salford at like one point in his life. I think he was enrolled there maybe for like a couple of months, I don't know. But also the other connection, the very obvious and Islamophobic connection, was that I'm a Muslim woman who was just about to become president at that university, and that students' union.
You know, I went out to the visuals every day, practically, in the city centre, in Deansgate, in Piccadilly, in St. Peter's Square, and so on. And I know lots of Muslim groups did the same. For us, it was about making sure that we were paying our respects, but also, unfortunately, that, you know, unless we were visible, people would assume that we didn't care, that it didn't have that impact on us, when it was huge.
Multiple articles that followed, it was something like white hating or terrorist sympathizer. Like, the kind of language that they were using was so dangerous and so like just deceptive in everything that it was, and like that's what the Daily Mail are known for, right? Like, the media, like they portray you how they want to portray you, they package you how they, doesn't matter what's in the body of the article, right? They'll package you and portray it in the way they want to portray it. And I remember just seeing my face everywhere, and like my social media blowing up.
I saw a massive shift in people's behaviour. Just people not wanting to sit next to me on trains. It just took me a bit by surprise by how people just then reacted to that incident happened, and therefore all of us are complicit, all of us are a problem.
I couldn't take public transport, couldn't freely walk around certain areas. I was getting death threats, letters written to me. My social media was flooded with like death threats. I don't think people recognize or realize when an article is written about you that it's completely a lie. It doesn't matter because the consequences are so severe. Like, you put somebody's life directly at risk. I think the worrying thing for me, and when I reached a point of like, actually this is maybe I should step away from this, is when I put my family directly at risk. Reporters are knocking on my door, you know, and my own family are like worried of like, is something gonna, if reporters are finding your houses and are the people that are threatening to kill you gonna find your houses? The kind of letters that I was getting specifically telling me that they're gonna wipe me and my family out, you know, that's worrying. And I think there's a thing of like, I can take responsibility for my actions. I'm the activist. I've decided to speak out, and therefore put myself on a public platform, right? My family didn't sign up for that, and I think that was a really worrying thing of like, actually, this is unfair. Like, this is, my mother's worried about like, you know, taking my little brother to school because there's random people outside the house. My office had reporters that would come, to the point where the university had to like arrange drivers and like organize taxis for me to be able to safely be in and out of the office.
If you are to look at terrorism within, you know, the greater historical scope, you will find that it's rarely ever Muslims or people that look like me or who are brown or black. And that what is considered terrorism has always been defined by governments who also have agendas. And so it's very complicated as well. It's very simplistic. This happens within a context where it's very easy to find someone to other, and we were the other.
It wasn't of who I was. It wasn't about Zamzam as an individual. It was about what I represented. That I was a visibly black Muslim woman, right? And therefore it could have been any other visibly black Muslim woman on that front page, right? It was nothing to do with me. I think the intention of articles like this and like media portraying us in these lights is to terrify us from taking up political spaces. It's to terrify us from calling out injustices and doing the work that we do. But inadvertently, what they did really is give me a platform. They gave me a bigger platform. I was just a young girl from Salford that nobody knew. And overnight, I was known across the country.
If you abuse Islam or Muslims, then there's a legitimate case of freedom of speech, and therefore it's okay. Put Muslim in an article and suddenly, you know, it's going to get clicked on. Muslims are, you know, very well integrated, particularly in the major cities, because we're working, we're studying, we're mixing, we're going out, we're socializing. And I think Muslim women particularly have made an even bigger effort to be constantly out.
If they have more programs about Muslim women or or what Islam is about, or what we believe in, or what we celebrate. It could stop them having that sort of narrow-minded idea about what Islam is. Media, I think media is the key.
I would say that my generation, those of us whose parents or grandparents came here, we, take on an unintended role in being a conscience for this specific society. We are the remnants of that past that is stubborn. And I think that's part of the reason why, unfortunately, we as a community, within the Muslim community specifically, we go through so much difficulty to access the opportunities that we want, because we really are a reminder of the yesteryears, that you have to deal with us now because we're here.
I've never, ever had anyone say anything on my behalf, which is it's quite sad, but I've learnt to be tough. I've learnt to do things on my own. I've learned to speak up for myself. I don't want to be seen as a weak Muslim, tall Muslim, weak girl that has no voice. No, we have a voice. We're not weak. We're strong.
There's only one hijab wearing MP. It is a very important thing for us to be able to see and understand that, we also belong in those powerful places and those spaces of making change, because we're a part of this community. This is our home. This isn't somewhere that we're here temporarily. Often as women, we limit ourselves in terms of our career ambitions and the potential of what we can achieve. And actually, even wider than that, as people of colour in general. But I think it's a very useful point, actually, to really go back and ask ourselves and reconsider, do I enjoy what I do? Do I think what I do is meaningful? Am I proud of what I do? And could I be doing something bigger, something more important?
In the industry, in the media industry, there are some supportive people. I can't generalise that everybody is Islamophobic. But there is a lot of hidden discrimination that goes on, and I think that not a lot of people talk about it because they're either worried that they're going to lose a job, or they feel that it could hinder their chances. And for me especially, I always feel that deep down inside, they want me to change myself in order for me to progress. But for me, there's no question that I would do that, because I would never compromise my identity. I'd never sell my soul.
It's an imperfect system. There are a lot of factors at play that unfortunately don't make journalism a very rosy craft or rosy practice. But despite the fact that it is imperfect and we need to continue to strive to make it perfect, we do the work. And hopefully we'll get to a point where we won't have to apologize for who we are and where we're coming from.
I am the first visibly Muslim woman to ever represent Manchester City Council. When I was selected to represent Ardwick, probably one of the most deprived parts of the country. I remember this man who'd come to support me after I won. He had his two daughters, who were two visibly Muslim young women, with him, and he came up to me and wanted me to take a picture with his two daughters because, he wanted to make sure that they could see that women like them can do the things that other people say that they can't.
I think it's important to try to connect with everybody, not just Muslim people, but anyone from any faith, just to get to know one another, because a lot of these people that are far right or racist don't have Muslim friends, don't have Muslim neighbours, don't integrate in society. I think it should start within schools as well, because that's where most of this kind of rhetoric happens, really, I think.
Politicians who are, openly against Muslims and, have these kind of issues where they don't want to even investigate Islamophobia within their countries do help in creating the intensity of the Islamophobia that exists today. And this is really to bring about a divide.
Particularly this generation, I feel, is much more powerfully kind of saying, well, here I am, and this is who I am. And I think that is very powerful. You know, the women that I follow on TikTok and on Instagram and Twitter, and, you know, just sharing their opinion about the world. And it does, you know, and that is their opinion. And that's as valid as anyone else's opinion. And I think that's incredibly important.
I do have hope. I hope that things are going to get better, and that, like, I am going to be able to build and fight for a community that I can raise my children in and be proud of, you know. And that's what we strive towards, and that's what we work towards. You wouldn't give your all to something that you didn't love or believe in, right?